Hello and welcome to Money Control. I am Shweta Punj. It's the season for reveries, literally and figuratively. As temperatures get lower in the northern part of the country, everyone's resorting to their favorite snack, reveries, that are small, bite-sized sweets made of sesame and jaggery. But it's also election season, and in political parlance, they are being referred to as small treats that are being offered to voters. These small treats like free tablets and e-scooters, however, bear a price tag. As voting across 5 state elections comes to a close, we take a closer look at the role of freebies in winning elections and the real cost of freebies on states and the citizens of India. To understand this in greater detail, I have with me Dr. Surjit Bhalla, former Executive Director for India at the International Monetary Fund, and of course, an economist, and most importantly, someone who has documented the India story for several decades. Thank you very much, Dr. Bhalla, for joining us. It's been some time now since you got back from Washington to India. And what a time it is. Elections are in full swing, and the announcements for the voters, the goodies for the voters are only getting more creative. How are you viewing this increasing and rising trend of offering freebies or reveries, howsoever you might term it, to the voters?
Look, thank you very much for having me. And you're absolutely right. It's election season, and weird things happen in India in the election season. And this time it's really got weird and predictable with the amount of, as you say, freebies being produced for the voter. And with the expectation that you plot them with freebies, and lo and behold, they'll vote for you. You know, something that I don't understand, and maybe we can try and clarify this. If every party gives the voter a freebie, and let us say at the margin, they increase the freebies, how is the voter, and what is the voter going to choose from? How is the voter going to decide that she's going to vote for party A rather than party B? Second, and I think this is where the media, you, Shweta, and your team need to just go into the freebies that have been announced. Let's take for Karnataka. How many of those freebies have actually turned out to be actuality? Did the people actually receive the money they were promised, the cars they were promised, or the computers they were promised, or whatever else they were promised? And I think I have been looking at the sporadic reports as to this freebie in Karnataka, which is the most recent example. And of course, we had Himachal Pradesh. I don't think there were any freebies announced in Himachal Pradesh, but that would be good to know that what came out of the ordinary, of the tradition, of what was expected, they gave the freebies. And was the cost-benefit analysis of the party? Do they actually get extra votes?
Right. Right, Dr. Bhalla, very interesting point. You know, Karnataka is the state that again offered 7 guarantees, something that's being offered in Rajasthan as well. Now, one of the things that we've learned is that in Karnataka, free bus rides were offered to women, and that has increased the mobility for women. So, I want you to, maybe talk about or help us understand what is the difference between freebies and welfare, and where does one draw the line? Because currently, there's also a case that's going on in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is expected to come up with a definition. Currently, we don't even have a legal definition for what qualifies as a freebie and what qualifies as welfare.
You know, a good question. And I would say that we don't need a definition. The states want to spend money on free bus rides for women and not for men. And we'll have to ask as to why this discrimination. But maybe they feel if they give it to the woman, she will go ahead and take a bus ride and vote for you. Okay. Now, I think, what's welfare? Let's take the example of free bus rides for women. Now, whose welfare goes up, by how much? And wouldn't it be better if this freebie was given as a cash transfer. Now, the importance of cash transfer is that we know about leakages. We know about whether the policy was actually pursued, how much money was given. But nobody is willing, and the politicians are certainly not willing to put themselves to their scrutiny. And, we go ahead and pontificate. So make it very simple. You want to give money, you meaning the state wants to give money to whosoever, whether it's through bus, everything is transferable, especially in this day of fintech and our UPI system. Give it through the UPI. Everything's transparent. And I guarantee you, Shweta, you won't get any takers from the political parties that are doing this.
Right. Dr. Bhalla, would you say that, there is this whole argument, and that both political parties are throwing, both key national political parties are throwing this argument at each other, that we are into welfare, but you are offering freebies. I'm talking about Congress versus BJP here. But would you say that all political parties are equally guilty of offering freebies / welfare? Secondly, the Congress's argument is that right now, considering the distress in rural India, there is a demand for this. So I want you to wear your economist hat on and help us understand if these freebies / welfare measures actually help in any way, and are there long-term benefits to these interventions?
Look, in that one statement, you asked about 4 different questions, and I'll try and answer each one of them. One, you mentioned that the Congress believes there's rural distress. Okay? Now, how many of their freebies are aimed at rural distress? Secondly, what is the evidence that they have provided this to rural people rather than urban people? Bus rides, to the best of my knowledge, are mostly an urban phenomenon. And even that, we don't know what money is produced. Look, this is this is an election season, and this is the age, an election of narratives that basically everybody can come out and say whatever they want to. By everybody, I mean the politicians. This is a problem. This is what we are doing. And you know what? Funnily enough, you can't verify either of those 2 statements. That's what I've been trying to do through my articles, etc. That let's have accountability in terms of just the data. So why are we talking about policies and their effectiveness when we don't know how much money has been given? We will find out whether the vote went up on December the 3rd for different parties. But what will be related to? The promises or the actual delivery? That's where the key issue is. So I think it's you spin a story and you hope for the best. So,
Right.
what's that old line? Lies, lies, and statistics. It's lies, lies, and narratives.
It's lies, lies, and narrative. No, so, just taking on the last question that I asked you in my previous question on the impact. Now, if you see states like Tamil Nadu, they've offered free food and subsidized grains for a very long time, and states in the southern part of the country tend to do better in terms of human development indicators simply because of free access to education, free access to more food, and so on. So is that a model worth replicating for other northern states as well? Or somewhere we are losing sight of what's important and what's not? Would you qualify, for instance, e-scooters and tablets as freebies? Somebody might argue saying that, these things are important in today's day and age, but are they that important? As in, how does one draw the line? And do we see poverty coming down or getting impacted because as an outcome of these interventions?
Okay. Let's look at the freebie of food. Okay. The Food Security Act was passed in 2014. 2014, before the elections. Now, prior to the Food Security Act, we had the same system of support prices for the farmers. The government went ahead and got the farmers and got the food and distributed through the ration shops. Now, I've done several analyses of how effective that was, and there was massive leakages. You know, there were some shows back in 2008, 2009 about the food being from the ration shops not reaching the people, but instead going to liquor companies or wherever else. Point is, it's a leakage. So what did it appear on the books? On the books, it appeared that we were giving or spending this much money. In reality, the people didn't get the money, didn't get the food, and therefore they went ahead, and presumably there was some argument to say that the reason the Congress lost so massively in 2014 was because they had all the schemes, but the schemes were very, very deficient in reaching the poor. Now, because of the availability of fintech, which we as a country are justifiably very proud of, so we should be using fintech in order to transfer everything in terms of money. Let's take food now. We have an elaborate system set up by which we procure money from procure food from the farmers, and it to the ration shop, give it to the poor. And the poor, mind you, okay, according to the Food Security Act, is 2/3 of the population. So what the BJP did during COVID, when there was an absolute necessity because you couldn't even get the food, even if you had the money, was distributed free food. And that all analysis suggests that was very, very effective. 90% of the money, of the food that was transferred to the poor, or transferred to the 2/3 of the population, reached 2/3 of the population. Now, there's a considerable amount of evidence that what the 2/3 of the population, I'm no longer going to refer to it as a poor, because 2/3 of the population is not poor. The bottom 20% maybe. So what happened with these lower middle class people who got the food? They went and sold it back and got the money.
Right.
So I'm saying, why cut the whole system short? Just give
Do cash transfers.
money. And everybody will know how much has been given. And you want to give it for education, you calculate this much is for education. You know, you brought up an interesting point that Tamil Nadu gave free schools or whatever, and their education went up. I've got news for you and for Tamil Nadu and for all other policymakers. Education enrollment across the board, whether it's Tamil Nadu or a state that doesn't do it, has gone up across the board. So they have done it without the freebies that Tamil Nadu presumably gave. So look.
So you're saying there is no correlation between offering freebies and an increased ranking in human development indicators, better quality of life and living?
None. There is correlation between expenditures by the school, by the state governments in schools, obviously, by expenditures in terms of health. Then just don't look at expenditures. Look at the efficiency of those expenditures, whether leakage, whether that's actually going to the people it's meant to. And poverty has been reduced across the board in India, was reduced before, and most poverty reduction. And I've done, you know, I'm sure I've programmed most of the poverty reduction within India or around the world is because of growth, not freebies.
Okay, that's good to hear. So, Dr. Bhalla, I want you to talk about state finances. Now, if we look at the state of Rajasthan, which is offering 7 guarantees, fiscally speaking, they are in high debt, and their growth rate has not kept up with other states with similar socioeconomic profile. So, what is the real cost of these freebies? For instance, in Karnataka, the cost of guarantees was approximated at 50,000 crores. 50,000 crores is the number that was given to us, but that's of course an approximation. Currently, for all the freebies that are in the offing, there are no cost estimates that have been given. Typically, what happens in a situation when a state goes out on a limb and promises everything for free? Where are the cutbacks that happen? Because there is a hidden cost to this.
Look, we are a democracy, and we are, if you will, a federal democracy. States have a lot of rights given to them. Very good. Completely approved. Now, some state wants to go and give free bus rides. And let's say another state says, no, a free bus ride will only get me some voters. I'm going to give them free helicopter rides. Absolutely, they should be allowed to, they are allowed to do it, should be allowed to do it. The only thing, and the real policy that needs adjustment is right now the states go ahead and spend and then just say, to the RBI and whatever, to the regulators, okay, I spent this much on this, I spent this much on this, and my debt has gone up. Now, why can't we implement the very straightforward system of there's a certain amount, right now it is 3% of your 3% deficit that the states are allowed. I want to spend 5%. Be my guest. Just go to the capital market and raise that money. So Rajasthan might be able to pay a premium of only 2%. Some other state might have to pay a premium of 5%, whatever it is. That's how the world works. That's how firms work. If you are not very creditable, you have to borrow at a higher rate than somebody else who's creditable.
Right.
So there should be a whole system of, economists are there, everybody else is there, the governments are there, local governments are there, state governments are there. Why don't we have a credit rating system of state finances? And then the state go ahead and borrow and let them, they can borrow from HDFC, they can borrow from State Bank of India, whoever. We have to set up,
Right.
this is 2023. Let's not act as if we are in 1953.
Right. So this will hold the state leadership also accountable in a way. If political parties are going to go ahead and just put everything on tap, and there is no sense of accountability, this would this would be a step in that direction.
Yeah. So look, I think it's really very, very, all I'm asking for, or my policy recommendations, all have to do with transparency and accountability. And let governments do what they want. Absolutely. There shouldn't be anybody dictating, if you will, like this discussion, this is a freebie. No, this is a welfare scheme. It's not a freebie. Define whatever you want to define. But go ahead and let yourself, first of all, be transparent as to what it's doing. So that means you and I have to know what they are doing and how it is reaching, who it is reaching. And second is that let them pay for whatever excesses they want to pay. That's what every family does. That's what every government does. That's what every country does. You have to be accountable for your actions. And that's what I'm saying. And it's very easy to do today. It's super easy for the governments to track, for the central government to track, for the state government to track what you're spending on.
Sure. So, Dr. Bhalla, does this worry you that this state election, which is clearly, taken this whole narrative on freebies to another level, this could set the stage for 2024, and with general elections around the corner, we could expect this to reach a higher crescendo before it finds some semblance of normalcy?
You're absolutely right, that danger is very much there. So what can we as civil society, as journalists, etc., do. We should be taking the data, just like you mentioned on free buses or whatever. How much of, and that should be broadcast fully. They promised, X promised this much, Congress promised this much, the BJP promised this much, and this much was delivered. Just a simple calculation. And who was it delivered to? Okay, if it's we are talking about the rural poor and K-shaped recovery and everything else, and now we are giving free bus rides to urban women. I I just don't get it. Or water, like as in Delhi. You know,
Yeah.
we are not doing our job properly, and I mean you, and I mean me. If we do not provide the evidence as to what actually is happening on the ground, and then let people decide. I don't want to interfere in anybody's decision making. They should decide on whatever. We provide them with information. We should provide ourselves with the information and disseminate it. That's what we are not doing.
Sure. Talking about global examples, Dr. Bhalla, any country that stands out for you that has managed to, strike a balance between freebies and welfare and yet accounting for it and being fiscally responsible? Or is that utopia and that's maybe not
No,
possible at all?
no. Back in very famous headline, and you can go to Google after this. And the headline was "Drop Dead New York," and I think it was either the New York Post or whatever. When New York state finances were in big trouble, and they were spending ahead as we are presumably doing or supposedly doing. And after that, they were required to go ahead and borrow from the marketplace. And that's the discipline. So, yes, US is an example. Everything is very transparent there. And that's what we should try and achieve. And they have to go and borrow from the marketplace. The credit ratings, New York can borrow at maybe now at a lower rate than Mississippi can, or whatever. The market will decide. You are with Moneycontrol, CNBC. I mean, this is what is done everywhere, but not done in India, or not done enough in India. And that's what unmarks it. We just take what the other countries are doing, the advanced countries. I won't look at developing countries because they would be more backward. But I'm telling you, this principle of just look what the state of the art is, which is what you have in advanced countries, was not possible before because the institutions were not there, the setup wasn't there, the information wasn't there. Now, with the amount of information every country has and the ease of transmission of information, thanks to the mobile and everything else,
Sure.
the government has, look at your tax returns. You fill in your tax return, and the system already knows how much you spent on this, how much you spent on that. We have all the information in the world. And with fintech, it is
Right.
now in seconds, not in days, that you can have the information,
Yeah.
real time information. We don't even need supercomputers in order to tabulate that information, make it public, and then you watch what happens.
Okay. So, Dr. Bhalla, closing comments. Do you anticipate headlines, similar headlines, drop dead XX state of India because of its specific state of finances? Any specific state that worries you in terms of their state of finances and the kind of freebies that are in the offering in that particular state? I'm talking about the election going states right now.
Yeah. No, look, if you're asking for my personal opinion, I'm not too worried because I think from the Karnataka example, that promises, and then there's no delivery. So I think there is still enough information circling around that people know. Now, what is that old line? You can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all people all the time. So I think, look, I'm not so worried, first of all, because I do think just the fact that we are having this show, that we are all sufficiently aware of the problems and of the dangers that will result if goes along without being checked. And again, it will be checked, because whether it is checked now or whether it's checked in 6 months from now after the elections, these will be checked. It can't go on. It's very unstable. This is an unstable equilibrium. And my constant plea to everybody is use information to provide checks and balances on politicians and on policies, both. So whether at the state level or the central level, use information. You have that information, I have that information. Unfortunately, not many people are interested in analyzing that information in order to provide guidance and information to policymakers. So the fault, dear all of us, is in ourselves, not in the politicians. We know what the politicians will do and what they would like to do, and they would like to get more votes no matter what. And we have to provide
Sure.
evidence that what you're doing may not get you more votes. And you know what? What you're promising, you're not delivering. So why should the voter go ahead and vote for you?
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bhalla. Just to sum up our conversation with Dr. Bhalla, freebies do not translate into better parameters on healthcare or access to education. Growth does. That's what Dr. Bhalla said. And he also said that states should be allowed to go to the markets to raise funds to bankroll the freebies that they are announcing, because that automatically will bring in transparency and hold political leaders accountable. Of course, ultimately the onus is on the voters to make informed choices, because at the end of the day there are no free lunches. Thank you so much. We'll keep tracking this story and several others on Money Control. Stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching.